Hello, everyone. My name is Caitlin King with Trinity Consultants. Welcome to our webinar. It is titled Streamlining Your EHS Compliance Using Microsoft Software. Trinity Consultants and ProSapient Software are so glad you are able to join us today, and we hope that you find the information that we are going to be presenting useful. Before we begin, I want to let everyone know that this webinar will be recorded and currently is being recorded, and we will post it on our website for future viewing. And all attendees are muted for the entirety of this webinar to avoid background noise. However, we do encourage questions, and they should be sent to the GoToWebinar question feature. All questions will be answered at the end by our presenters. All right, well, now that we have our logistics out of the way, let's begin with our first presenter, Adam Forney of Trinity Consultants.
All right, thanks, Caitlin. All right, as Caitlin said, the first portion of this webinar will be from Trinity and the second from ProSapient. I will be presenting the Trinity Consultants portion entitled Streamlining Your EHS Compliance Using Microsoft Software. My name is Adam Forney. Hang on just a sec. Caitlin, can you see that?
I can see it.
All right. My name is Adam Forney, and I am a managing consultant with T3. I am also the innovation team leader. So that means that, for the most part, I do handle a lot of the customizations of EMIS systems out there for our clients, as well as building custom tools on the occasional basis. I'm a PMP certified project manager, and I do have 9 years experience as an EHS technology implementation specialist. So as I mentioned, I am with T3, which is a division of Trinity Consultants, and our goal really is to provide EHS information technology solutions that are innovative, appropriate, cost-effective, and sustainable. Really our core success criteria is that mindful planning yields successful projects. That is, do your work during the planning phase so that you can get a successful implementation. We do most often deliver enhanced EHS business processes through technology, but we often do not deliver the technology. That is, most of the time we are implementing third-party software. We always tell the customer that the easy button does not exist, and your EHS problems will not simply go away with the implementation of your new system. These projects are very hard and risky, but they are also full of potentially transformative results if you do them correctly. And then, of course, our customers' investment is precious. So that really entails that we always tell the customer what is in their best interest and not what is in the third-party software company's best interest. I won't go too much in depth into this implementation process, as we've all seen something like this before, but really this is just to say that T3 covers all phases of the implementation process for multiple clients, and some clients bring us in for one portion, some bring us in for all. It really depends on what the client needs and when they need us. We do, at Trinity Consultants, have offices throughout the U.S., as well as some foreign offices in China, the Middle East, and the United Kingdom. This is just a selection of some of T3's clients in the past few years that we have notably helped with through EHS information technology solutions. Now, EHS information technology, the first portion of this is going to be on some of the basics about EHS information technology. Then I'm going to go into the best practices for such an implementation. And then I'm going to talk about the main point, which is using Microsoft software in these cases. So what are the drivers for even having EHS information technology? Why do organizations invest in this? Well, organizations have their reasons, which we'll get into. And then what can this technology do? That is, what is the value of this technology to the companies that do utilize it? And then, do success stories exist? And that sounds kind of like a silly question, but there are a lot of folks out there who don't believe that successful implementations of EHS software are possible. And then, what is critical to success? So we will dive right into the drivers. And there are different perspectives on the drivers as to why organizations invest. Verdantix, which is an independent research firm that is prominent in the EHS technology market, really lists their main reasons through their guide as, really reducing risk. You're saving time on your data flow processes, and you're, reducing things that entail, risk to your company through non-compliance, incidents happening, fines and penalties through non-compliance, and so on. NAEM, which is a professional organization in the EHS world, lists some of their, in their buyer's guide, their reasons in their buyer's guide as, centralizing your data collection efforts, building a management system, that is allowing your company's management to see EHS data when they need to see it, when they need to make the appropriate decisions, and improving your compliance assurance, which goes back to reducing the risk of non-compliance. We want to improve accountability for performance, which in real world terms means in a system you can see typically what everybody's doing and when they're doing it, which is a good thing in most cases. In a lot of EHS departments, such accountability does not exist. And then, of course, collecting data for internal and external reporting also is important. From the T3 perspective, really, we take these and elaborate on them. In that centralizing the data is important, but so is standardization of the data, as well as standardization of the work processes. We also, talk about enhancing compliance assurance visibility, which is just as important in improving your compliance assurance from NAEM. And then, of course, we are, enhancing the risk management, but our main goal is to accelerate your EHS department and go from good to great. This really is just a visual of, the intertwined gears of the drivers, where your standardized EHS business processes, your centralized structured information, and your enhanced capabilities and performance all work together in that acceleration of your EHS department. So value, what do organizations get in return from EHS technology? Well, the main thing is that they increase efficiency and effectiveness. They will have more accurate and structured information, as well as more efficient business processes in their EHS department. We talked about increased accountability and increased visibility. Now, we have better EHS performance as well, reduced risk of non-compliance and enhanced risk management tools, as well as better and faster decision-making when you do need to make them. And then, of course, enhanced capabilities, which is most of the adding of the positives of having such a system that probably don't exist, is the efficiency of information archiving, as well as the retrieving of that information, basically to say, to make data flows exist where there are poor data flow processes in place prior to this. And of course, better management oversight, as well as better risk management capabilities. Now, from a success perspective, there are different perspectives, of course. Your management is going to be looking for accurate, transparent, visible, and timely performance across all levels. When they're also looking for more capability, and the key, without adding significant resources. Now, from the EHS perspective, structured information is important, but we want to be able to easily mine it and leverage it. It's not of much use to have such a system if you can't get your data out. And then, of course, less data acquisition and more data analysis. That is to say, work, should be focused when you have one of these systems on the latter versus the former. From an operations perspective, you're looking at reducing the data collection efforts and focusing on, the intuitive processes and tools that you gain. From an IT perspective, which is by far the most overlooked perspective, you're looking for security, and you're looking for not overly burdensome to maintain over time, which in all honesty happens quite a bit to EHS technology implementations and must be properly mitigated. What kinds of EHS business processes does this technology enable and accelerate? Well, we talked about compliance. You're looking to avoid non-compliance, as well as put corrective actions in place when they're necessary. You're looking for air emission calculations, and when you have to do air emissions inventories. You're looking for waste profiling from the generator to the manifest, the whole process. You're looking for water and chemical data. Very similar data things that you can gain for chemicals. Material safety data sheets is a big one out there that people use systems a lot for. Audits and inspections goes quite a bit into almost all of those categories above. You really need to get those audits and inspections done, even if it's just going to collect the engine hours of a particular engine in order to calculate air emissions. There are quite a few companies that use such technology for incident tracking and management, as well as health and safety goals, which could entail observations, hazards, proactive measures, anything along those lines. And then from the management system and sustainability metrics perspective, these mostly typically are internal gains that are enabled and accelerated by such technology, but they are nevertheless important for your management to be able to see the data. It's just that usually the drivers for such things are typically internal. Now, capabilities, this is to say, how does, this EHS technology accelerate some of the processes we mentioned on the previous slide? Well, you're looking at, these kind of 5 categories here. Oops, sorry. You're looking at these 5 categories here: data management, data collection, automated monitoring, as well as work processes and reporting. So basically, from the collection of the data all the way through to getting the data out of the system, as well as looking at the processes, whether that's automated or manual, that is an important part of your technology system, and that's what enables any of those categories on the previous slide to be accelerated. And data management kind of falls into all of them because you will be archiving this data, as well as wanting to keep it and keep it secure. Now, this is effectively just a more visual and specific slide to kind of name some things that are typically out there that people put EHS systems in place for. They're right along the same categories of what we just talked about, but SPCC, Title V compliance reviews, KPIs, which is sometimes internal, sometimes driven by outside forces, MSDS we mentioned, and of course you can do asset management with some of these systems as well. Now at this portion, we'll get to the best practices for EHS system implementations, and effectively this also means avoiding these common pitfalls. Now, the first and foremost before going into an implementation is to understand and analyze your existing processes, your existing EHS data flow processes that will be in the new system. And it seems silly, but do these processes actually exist in any form? It is typically a bad practice to take a process that doesn't exist in any form, whether that be using a set of spreadsheets across the company and passing them around, or people calling each other on the phone. If a process of data flow doesn't exist, it's typically a bad idea to put it in a system, as many of the folks who tried to put, subpart W from the greenhouse gas rule into systems, for that first year experience. And then, that, kind of typically entails that there are data sources for your organizational hierarchy as well as your engineering and EHS data. It's kind of important that that data actually exists somewhere, and if it doesn't, you're going to run into trouble. The second, and kind of goes along the beginning of an implementation when you're effectively doing your needs assessment for a software. Do not choose an EHS software product based solely on pretty charts, graphs, and appearance. We most often, unfortunately, have upper management at companies in these rooms, and they very rarely ask the important questions when some of these salespeople show them these graphs, and they don't ask, how does it work, or do we have the data to actually make that chart? And that can lead over time to very high levels of dissatisfaction when the system is actually implemented, because if the management can't actually get what they thought they were going to get, and it doesn't typically go well. So when planning the implementation, you also must consider the complexities of each phase or module, or whatever your milestones are for your entire system implementation. There are two pathways. You could go the easiest first if you're looking at analyzing the complexity of each phase, and that means you get a win and possibly better organizational support. Or you could go the most complex phase first, and in doing so, you will find out very quickly if you chose the right software or if your upper management chose the right software. But you might possibly not get another shot at your EHS technology for quite some time if it fails or goes terribly. Most often, successful implementations take the easiest first route, even though it seems kind of counterintuitive, because getting that win and organizational support oftentimes gets people to participate a little bit better when it comes time to implement those more complex phases. You do need to plan the system sustainability model prior to the implementation being complete. Who will be your super users? That means that you have some implementation consultants probably implementing your software, but do you want to keep them there for an extended period of time after the implementation is complete? Or who is going to be the people who are going to take over some of those more advanced roles, really know your system and really know the ins and outs of how to do something, who you don't have to spend extra money on? And then, budget and IT department involvement. This is, again, I kind of mentioned earlier, but this is one of those things that kills implementations going down the line. A lot of EHS departments, typically handle, the implementation sort of separately from their IT department. And then when it comes time to either upgrade or, have maintenance, ongoing sustainability, and your IT department's wasn't very involved in the implementation, you run into problems. And budget there is important too, because most companies think that they are implementing a software that will not cost a ton of money after the implementation. And if it's done correctly, that will be the case. But you do need to have some budget to counteract what we were talking about before, which could be people not participating in implementation or other things that you might run into. You do need to take the expectation levels of all parties down a little bit. This goes back to what I said at the beginning. This is not a magic button. This will not make all your EHS problems disappear. Typically that means, even though I'm saying, all EHS problems, most of the time, there's underlying problems that people don't really find until they actually try and put something into a computer system. They actually see how inefficient or ineffective something is. Another part of that is that, companies think that, going faster, getting that system in, as fast as possible and spending as little as possible to do it, will, work for them. And that's, as with many things in life, that's just not true. You need to spend the time and money to get it right the first time because, again, you might not have another chance for a while to get EHS technology implemented. Your, data will not magically appear in your system. So the system that you're implementing is not going to, have data that you don't already have, which it seems silly, but often is something that, we run into when doing these implementations is people thought they had data, turns out it doesn't exist. So it goes back to the first point I made on the previous slide. You need to know your underlying processes very well. You do need to make a commitment to a culture change a lot of times to go along with your new systems to ensure success. Everyone must make some sort of compromise, and hopefully those are little compromises, but it doesn't often work when different portions of the company say, I want my way. I need exactly this mechanism. Now, I don't care if it affects this other department. They can have some other mechanism. That doesn't really help universalize your processes to go into a system and end up hurting. And then, of course, ensure that the personnel actually know that the new system isn't here to take their jobs. It's here to accelerate what they do. So that means that they should be, able to focus on the more advanced tasks. Again, getting away from the more manual data collection processes and getting into the more, analysis of the data that they actually have and ensuring compliance. So, as I said, we're, to the main portion of why we're here today. We talked about some of the best practices for an implementation. And some of the things that we've learned over the years is that, quite a bit of these, common pitfalls are often, mitigated when Microsoft products are brought in to either, supplement or to either serve as the entire EHS solution for a company. And we're going to get into those reasons just momentarily. But, it is worth noting that, to define a Microsoft solution, it's really the use of one or more of Microsoft software products that you typically already have to create efficient and low-cost EHS data solutions. SharePoint and Microsoft Office are typically a big part of these. Microsoft Office, over the years, there's a reason why it is the most widely used EHS technology. I mean, we're talking about Excel spreadsheets, SQL servers, things like that, where you may have, some softwares out there, touting that they can do, lots of things, but, if you're not able to really hit what the company actually wants, then, it doesn't usually work out. And Excel has been something that people were used to before they put their system in. And a lot of times, making an automated solution through Excel and SharePoint, is quite effective. This entails making, again, quick and flexible solutions that are relatively low cost. So, really, these are, effectively the 5 main things that Microsoft solutions can do for a company who is looking for an EHS solution. They really most often do not involve extra licensing costs. That typically you can, typically you can sustain this through your, your client or our client personnel, where you don't have to call the consultant every time you want to make an update. That entails being low cost. In addition, there are sometimes that, as we mentioned, data processes don't exist at all. and a lot of people want to put a system in place before they actually have a process. And with Microsoft products and, forming a solution through Microsoft software, we're able to, piece together things that, the company personnel really is mostly already familiar with, and get that data process flowing. And then, as we'll talk about in a moment, be able to automate some of that. Now, Microsoft solutions can also, again, as we said before, be updated. You can react more quickly and efficiently to your changing regulatory needs than your typical commercial, implementation. That is to say that they're very update friendly. One or more Microsoft products can, help fill in the gaps. Now, what that means is that, it depends. Maybe you already have a system. Maybe you have nothing. You can take one of these Microsoft products and, fill in some of the gaps that you have, or you can make an entire solution out of it, as you'll see ProSapien talk about momentarily. Now, so that means that you can either supplement existing systems or, have an entire solution out of this. You can also perform, systems integration, and parentheses there really is without the red tape. Systems integration processes can take forever, and, really using some of these Microsoft products they can gather data from multiple sources at once and bring it all together in a place where, everybody can get the data that they need without having to wait, 12 months for somebody to give you access to a server or to create some sort of bus that brings the data over to your EHS system. So we said, that these solutions are low cost. Now these next few slides are going to be just more detail on what I just talked about. Really, employees typically have at least basic Excel proficiency. And, over time, newer generations of employees that are coming in these days, they have a lot higher proficiency on these things. They've been taught quite a bit, in their schooling. And, some of the Microsoft experts, SharePoint experts that are in-house are capable of maintaining your solution rather than keeping expensive consultants around, for a long period of time. And of course, that means that there's less training necessary and easier acclimation, which is very helpful in keeping satisfaction levels high. Again, we said that they're a good first step. Some companies don't have any processes at all for certain data. And so, again, just like you would go about, taking these, taking a data flow process and put Excel spreadsheets into the system or into play, that you can also do that in such a way where, you can combine it into SharePoint, you can combine automation. And down here we say, much time and money goes into the creation of an unsustainable solution, when instead the groundwork could have been laid with an MS solution to start with, a Microsoft solution. That means, a lot of times people, waste a lot of money on these, software implementations of processes that don't exist, when they could have, effectively got done right the first time. Of course, they are update friendly. When new regulations come out, you can react quickly. If there are internal initiatives that, somebody wants some kind of data, you can get it to them more quickly. You want to update emission factors, you can do it. Rather than keeping your consultants around, you can do it yourself. In supplementing existing systems, oftentimes, these more commercial, solutions, there's this black box complaint of, I don't know how it works. I don't know what goes on the system. I put the data in, sometimes it comes out and other times it doesn't. Making these calculations visible through Excel, SharePoint, is very helpful in alleviating this concern. Data entry mechanisms can be highly customizable and have data validation and conditional process flows, as you'll see momentarily again with ProSapien, such that you can get away from these complaints. And then the most common complaint is reporting. Why can't I have the Excel report that I already have, the pie chart that I already have? Well, in these kinds of solutions, you can automate Excel spreadsheets as well as PowerPoint slides, such that you don't have to spend 7 days every quarter putting this stuff together. It can just refresh from a data flow when it's time to produce the graph, and you simply have to, show the presentation. And again, that doesn't eliminate people's jobs, but it allows them to focus on the more important things. And then, of course, systems integration. There's really no limit as to what you can put together in an automated Excel spreadsheet. Beginning in Excel 2007, you can combine, you can access databases from multiple sources, and again, putting these all together, and a lot of times is very helpful. It could come from some of these data historian systems that are pulling data out in the field or out in the facility, or it could come from another system that you already have in place. But in addition, you can also have manual data entry tabs alongside this and combine it with that if you don't have a system for data. So again, filling in the gaps for processes that don't exist and using these Excel functions such as index match and sum ifs, you really can create powerful data tables that can really be helpful and again, easily updatable by company personnel. So Microsoft SharePoint, as I mentioned earlier, this is a web-enabled collaborative tool that helps your personnel work better as a team by integrating these products together. What it can do, most people always use it for document storage and management. You probably have a SharePoint portal out there in your company today. Some people use it for internal social networking capabilities. Some people use data process workflows, and with those workflows, you can do email notifications, as well as have calendars with Outlook integration, which is something, unfortunately, that a lot of those commercial EHS systems out there don't have. Now, you can also have custom web applications, as well as you can get those dashboards that are so pretty, that the company managers love, but you can also have an updatable process by which you can actually sustain those graphs over time. And really, all of this functionality can be applied to a Microsoft solution, and this increases collaboration, record-keeping requirement compliance, as well as overall EHS data process efficiency. So as we mentioned earlier, the next part of this webinar will be given by Prosapien. And this is a professionally designed EHS information technology solution that's built on Microsoft software. So again, we talked about some of the best practices, as well as how Microsoft software can really mitigate a lot of those common pitfalls. And Prosapien is right up that alley. So you can integrate seamlessly with your existing client infrastructure via Microsoft SharePoint and Microsoft Office 365. It's available on-premise or through cloud hosting. It's intuitive and easy to navigate, which again, something that is very prominent in Microsoft solutions. And it's also highly configurable and sustainable. So with that, I will turn it over to the guys at Prosapien, and I will switch the presenter here.
Hello, folks, and thank you, Adam. That was a great overview there, and a lot of the things that you commented on there, we certainly concur and could add to that. So my name is Murray Ferguson, and I'm the Commercial Director at Prosapien. With me is Andy Gray, Principal Consultant, who will be taking you through today's demonstration, showing you what's possible with your SharePoint and Microsoft Technologies investment. So here's the agenda for the next half hour. I'll spend a couple of minutes introducing Prosapien and what gives us the qualifications to talk to you about EHS and Microsoft Technologies. I'll then touch on the basics in terms of what we see organizations doing with Microsoft software from an EHS perspective out of the box. We, however, intend to spend as much time as possible showing you the software. So Andy will demonstrate the art of the possible using the Microsoft platform, avoiding some of the significant fees charged by many of the enterprise EHS software vendors out there. So first, a little bit of background on ourselves. Both Andy and I have worked with Microsoft Gold certified partners delivering various productivity solutions, including EHS management systems. In 2012, we spun out the SharePoint dev team from our parent company API into Prosapien to focus on our flagship EHS software product. From its inception, our vision was to implement EHS solutions for large enterprises that have invested in the Microsoft platform. We're based in the UK with clients headquartered across North America and Europe, with about 50% of our clients being global organizations. We have a cross-sector client base, typically working with companies that are in high risk or highly regulated industries. Here's a sample of our clients. They range from relatively small organizations to major conglomerates such as ThyssenKrupp, who build moving walkways and elevators right through to chemical plants. BAE Systems in defence and aerospace. Shawcor in the oil and gas industry, one of our first clients, headquartered in Toronto with over 200 sites globally. Tronox is, I think, our most recent addition to the client list, and they are a US-based chemicals company. So why do our clients choose to go down the Microsoft route for EHS software? So if your organization has invested in Microsoft Office and SharePoint or Office 365, your IT departments will have spent significant amounts of money ensuring the workforce has appropriate access and permissions through the likes of Active Directory. Furthermore, they support the infrastructure including bandwidth, data security and uptime of that Microsoft platform. So this is a strategic spend that will often run to millions of dollars to ensure all areas of the business have access to the Microsoft suite. And all this is good news for you because Microsoft has invested billions of dollars in this platform that EHS managers and directors can start using out of the box. So need to manage your documents collaboratively in a central area, SharePoint gives you that out of the box. Need version control and date stamps on documents, SharePoint gives you that. Need to set review dates for documents, again, SharePoint and Office 365 provides this. Restricting access to certain people, no problem. It's all out of the box. So combine this functionality with a familiar look and feel, single sign-on, so no need to remember passwords and usernames. And is it any wonder that for many organizations, SharePoint or Office 365 becomes the document portal for all things EHS. However, as Adam has already discussed, there are many requirements needed of enterprise EH solutions that go beyond knowledge management and collaboration. The good news is that there's a raft of other technologies that Microsoft provide and that Prosapien take advantage of that we provide organizations like yours so that you can have an enterprise EHS solution. So you can have a SharePoint solution that handles task management, workflow, forms, and the reporting requirements to meet OSHA and other compliance directives. I'm now going to hand you over to Andy Gray, who will demonstrate some of the basic features and some of the more advanced features that we deploy with our clients.
Okay, thanks, Murray. So what we're looking at now is the front page of a SharePoint portal for an example organization that's using Prosapien's software. So as you can see, this particular portal is being used by many parts of this business, and the HSEQ system has been integrated into that existing portal. And that's a typical scenario when we deploy the software. We integrate seamlessly with your existing SharePoint environment. So I've clicked on the HSEQ link. That takes me to the landing page of where ProSapien's system is installed. This first page is an example of a SharePoint web parts page. And that means you are in full control of the information that's presented. This is an example of a global welcome page for everyone in the organization. However, you may want to show different statistics or different information depending on where someone is geographically located, which business unit they're in. So it's a very flexible part of the system. You can present the content appropriate to the audience. You can also use a mix of standard SharePoint functionality, such as the description area and the announcements area here, and functionality that ProSapien delivers with the system. We have a few examples there. We have quick links to fill in forms, such as the incident report. We have a view on the Action Manager, which is a central area where you can manage all your corrective actions, which we'll see in more detail later on. And we also have an example of one of the many ways you can surface the management information in the system. Here we're highlighting the top 10 categories of hazard observation, but you can slice and dice data from any of the various forms in our system. It's a very flexible part of the system, and we'll see lots more examples later on. So I'm going to click on the incident reports link. And what that's going to do is it's going to take me to the form library where all incident reports in the system are held. So every module in our system has a library like this one where you can view all the forms that have been filled in. You'll see various fields from the incident form here are available as columns, so details such as the date and time, location, and type. And that allows you to use SharePoint views to sort, filter, and group the forms. So as an example of that, I'm looking at a view here showing the open incidents by country, so I can expand the US and get access to those individual forms. However, views are very flexible. If you're familiar with creating views in SharePoint already, then you'll be familiar with this concept. You're not stuck with a fixed list of views that we provide. You can create your own additional views as different requirements come up. So as an example, I've got an incident by type view here. This particular form covers many types of incidents, so I can easily see the environmental incidents versus the safety. I've also got one here that will show me all the incidents in the US, which is a simple filter. However, I've also brought through the description field from the form. This gives me a useful overview of all the incident reports in the US. Because we're based on SharePoint, we do pick up integration with Microsoft Office. We've got an example on screen here where I'm signed in to Skype for Business or Link. And that means that looking at this incident report that was submitted by Murray, I can actually see his presence directly within SharePoint. And I can message him or call him all directly from the system. So that's one example, and we'll see lots more examples later on. So we'll now see how someone might report a new incident. In order to do that, I've gone back to the front page of the system, and I'll click on the incident report link. And that gives me a new incident report to fill in. So we're asked some key details, such as the date and time when the incident occurred, the type of incident that's occurred. One key feature of ProSapien's forms is they are dynamic. So depending on the type of incident we're reporting, we will be asked for different information. So for a personal incident, we'll be asked for details of injured parties. For property damage, we'll be asked for cost information and details of property owners. We do indicate where within the organization the incident occurred. In this example, I do that by selecting a country we do business in. I can then select one of our sites, and I can also go down to the sub-location level. When we deploy the system, we do integrate it to use your organization structure. So you may organize your sites differently, and that's not a problem. The organization structure is important for aspects such as security. So within our system, you can set access at any level in your organization structure. So a site manager will be able to see the information for their site, but a region or country manager will be able to see all the sites within that part of the business, all the way up to global access. So you've got very granular control over the security. Also, in terms of notifications, different people will need to be notified about incidents depending on where the incident occurred. Again, that's within your control to manage who should be informed when an incident occurs. That can vary based on location, but also other aspects such as the type of incident. So different teams can be informed about environmental incidents versus health and safety, and also the severity of the incident. So more serious incidents may require more people to be informed. We've got other details such as a description of exactly what happened, any immediate actions were taken, what the incident involved. A key point here is anytime you see a drop-down list, like a list of locations or a list of options like this one, you are in full control of those options. So nominated people within your organization can edit these lists over time, so you don't need to come back to Prosapien to make those kinds of changes to the forms. You can also add attachments to the form. You can attach any Office documents, PDFs, etc. You can also attach images to the form. And I've got an example on screen here. If you attach an image, you do see a small preview of the image on the form itself. However, if I click on that, we always have access to the full-size image. So we're not losing any of the detail in a high-resolution photograph. The system does retain that. So that's all the information that's required to report an incident initially. I've captured the key information that's required in order for the system to send out notifications. There's then a workflow process that guides the form through the various stages required to follow up on an incident. So in order to show you that, I've gone to an incident that's actually at the final stage in that process, the final review and closeout. You can see at this stage the form looks a bit different. We've now got a number of tabs that map to the various stages in the incident process. On the notification tab, we always have access to the original notification that was filled in. So we can always see the original details that came from the site. Typically, the first stage in the workflow is a review. So you can open up access in our system to allow anyone within your organization to report incidents. However, the review within the workflow ensures that you keep control of the quality of the information. So you know a qualified person has reviewed the incident, ensured that it is valid, ensured it's classified correctly, etc. Now, there are lots of fields on this form here, so I'm not going to go through all of those. So I'm just going to highlight some of the key features. For example, the ability to classify the severity of an incident using your severity matrix. So this is an example where we integrated one of our clients' severity matrix into the form itself so that all that advice is accessible directly within the form. You can capture the details of the investigation stage, so who's going to carry out the investigation, details such as exactly what happened and what documentation was in place or not in place, the timeline of the incident as well, details of injured parties. So this is actually an example of where the form is dynamic. So because this is a safety incident, we're being asked for details of injured parties, so their personal information and details of exactly what's happened, such as the mechanism of injury. If this was an environmental incident or property damage, we would be asked for different information at this stage. You can also capture multiple witness statements, as well as capturing the electronic copy. You've also got the ability to attach scanned, handwritten or signed copies and keep all that evidence within a single document. You're also able to capture the various causes of the incident as well. And again, these are lists of options that are within your control. This is a particular standard that one of our clients uses. However, if you have your own sets of causes that you want to continue to use in the new system, that's not a problem. You can set up the appropriate lists. Last tab I'm going to talk about on this form before moving on is the Actions tab. And this is where the incident report form integrates with ProSapiens Action Manager. So the Action Manager is a shared module. Any of our other forms can feed into the Action Manager, so you can raise actions from an incident report, a risk assessment, audit, inspection, and our various other forms. In order to raise a new action, we give the action a title, a particular priority, a categorization, a full description of what's required. We can also assign that action to a particular person, and because we're based on SharePoint, we have access to all the users within your network, so you don't need to load our system with your list of users. The system has access to that already, and that means I can search for someone by part of their name or their email address. We can also give each action a due date. So once an action is assigned, the action owner receives an email, the full details of the action that they've been assigned, and also a link back to the Action Manager so that they can update on the progress that they're making. So within a specific incident report, I can see the actions that were raised from this incident. However, if I want to see all actions assigned to me or actions from different areas and different processes, I would go to the Central Action Manager, because that's the central area in the system where you can manage all corrective actions. So I've come out of that incident report, I've come into the Action Manager, and so this is that central area where all actions are managed. By default, I'm shown the My Active Actions view. Because I'm logged into SharePoint as this particular person here, Jack Ford, I'm seeing Jack's outstanding action list. So I have 2 actions to complete. However, using SharePoint views, you can easily see different sets of data according to your requirements. So for example, if I want to see all open actions within the system, I could easily go to the All Actions by Site view, and I can see the number of actions against each site and get access to those. You'll see here that every action in the system is assigned a unique identifier. If an action was raised from an incident report, for example, it maintains that link to the incident that it came from, so you've got that traceability. And you can also see who the actions are assigned to, their due date, priority, etc. So you can keep on top of all the various actions across the organization. Using SharePoint, you're not limited to viewing actions in a flat list. So one of the other views I've prepared here is a calendar view. And so this is where I've organized my actions calendar format by their due date. I could filter that for my part of the business, and that will give me a useful view of the corrective actions for planning purposes. Okay, so far we've taken a look at integration with SharePoint, an example incident form, and how to find forms using SharePoint views on the library, and also a quick look at the Action Manager. One thing I should have mentioned is that all of our forms work on any device. So I'm using a desktop machine here to fill in a form. However, our forms do work on tablet devices and cell phone devices as well. So as an example of that, I'm just going to quickly show you an example of a form specifically designed for a mobile scenario. We have a case study on this particular form. So this has been delivered for one of our clients, Vinci PLC. And this is an example of a close call or positive intervention form. Could easily be called hazard observation, specifically designed to be filled in on a mobile device. And the key feature of this technology is the form will resize according to the screen space available. So in this example, I'm looking at the form with a 2-column layout because I'm on a desktop machine. If I reduce the size of my browser here to simulate a phone form factor, you'll see it immediately resizes to a single column layout. So it's very easy to fill in on that smaller device. If you're filling this in on an Apple device, features such as the date picker here will show the Apple date picker. And also, If you want to take a photograph of an observation on a mobile device, you will have the option to attach a photograph direct from camera. So using Prosapiens Forms, you can make it very convenient for your users to start logging information just on their smartphone and remove as many barriers as possible in getting that data reported and into the system. So now we'll take a look at some of the management information capabilities within Prosapiens system. So all the data that's filled in on the various forms is held within a data warehouse. That data warehouse is compatible with all the various Microsoft reporting technologies. And depending on whether you're on-premise or in the cloud, and depending on your license level, you'll have access to different technologies. However, we're compatible with all the various Microsoft options. So at the moment, we're looking at an example of a high-level dashboard. So some people within your organization will want to access statistics at the click of a button. And this is a good example of a high-level dashboard that's very easy to access on a page within the SharePoint site. So just going through some of the examples here, we have filters so that we can change the location that we're looking at or look at a different time period. We have key performance indicators or KPIs that the system is tracking automatically. So a good example of that is overdue actions. So I've set my goal here to be 0. However, according to the action manager within the system, there's currently 3 overdue. So that's being flagged as red automatically. So using the KPI functionality, you don't need to troll through lists of actions and forms to see if you're on track. Dashboards such as this one can highlight where you're going off track so that you can spend your time efficiently. The rest of the dashboard is pretty self-explanatory. Some of the metrics I'm showing here may not be particularly relevant to your organization. However, that's why as part of an implementation, we do spend time with you to understand your reporting requirements and ensure that the dashboards and reports in the system are configured to meet those requirements. Because we have a data warehouse within our system, there are also various opportunities for data integration. So you may have other data sitting in your other applications. A good example is hours worked data for the calculation of incident rates. We do have forms for capturing that data within our system. However, if you already have it somewhere else, we can perform a data integration to pull that data into the data warehouse automatically. So you're not keying in information that's already available elsewhere in your organization. The other point around the data warehouse is the ability to import historic information. The majority of our clients, as part of an implementation, will provide previous year's numbers for importing into the data warehouse, and that allows you to perform year-on-year comparisons within our system from day one of using the software. So that's a good high-level example. The other example I'm going to show you is an example of where you can create your own additional reports for the system. So you're not limited to a fixed list of reports that Prosapiens provides. You can create your own additional reports as different requirements come up. And the tool to create those reports is Microsoft Excel. So Prosapiens Data Warehouse is compatible with Excel as a data source. So if you want to create your own report, you simply connect to the data warehouse, and you can start creating pivot charts and pivot tables directly from the data collated in the system. With SharePoint, you also have the additional capability to share that report. And that's what the report author has done here. They've created the report in Microsoft Excel. They've then published that to SharePoint. And that means as a report viewer, I can view the report within Internet Explorer, within my browser. It's become another page within the SharePoint site. When you publish, you have very granular control over the security. So you could share this with 1 or 2 colleagues or the entire organization. It's up to you. And an important point is when you've created this report, you've not done an extract of the data and worked on a snapshot. You've actually got a live link back to the data warehouse. So whenever you want to refresh this report, There's no manual steps required to extract some additional data. The report maintains the connection to the data warehouse. And so when you look at this report, you're always looking at the latest information. And that comes back to the workflow that I explained around the incident report form. So because there is a workflow process within the system, ensuring that every incident has gone through the appropriate level of review, you can have confidence in the numbers. So you know that the categorization of the incident has been reviewed by a qualified person. And so that means that anyone coming to these dashboards and seeing the latest information is seeing an accurate picture of the statistics. So, as I mentioned earlier, that our system is available on-premise and in the cloud. Everything we've demonstrated so far is available on-premise and in the cloud version. What I'm going to show you next is an example of a feature that's available in the cloud only. So if you're using Microsoft Office 365, then you'll have access to this capability, which is called Power BI. Power BI is another example of one of those Microsoft reporting technologies that our data warehouse is compatible with. So what I've done now is I've switched to an example of a Power BI dashboard. So Power BI makes it very easy to create your own dashboards, to share dashboards with others within the organization. One of the strong features of Power BI is the ability to map data geographically. So this particular dashboard is based on hazard observations. You can see we have various charts, which are the kind of features you'll be used to from Excel reports. However, we've also got the ability to map geographically, so we can easily see where our observations are coming from across the organization. What we're looking at here is actually my personal dashboard. So what I've done is I've gone through the various reports within the system, and I've pinned the charts that I'm interested in to my dashboard. This gives me one page where I can see all the up-to-date information that I'm personally interested in. If I click on an element of my dashboard, this actually takes me to the underlying report. So you can see here there's a lot of additional information available in here. This report contains lots of different pages with different sets of information that I might be interested in. And so you can see you can easily drill from your dashboard to the more detailed information. You can also focus on any element of the report as well. So I'm on quite a small screen here, so I can pop out this particular map and I can get a detailed overview of where our observations are coming from across the organization. It's also very easy to create your own additional reports for the system. So if you're familiar with creating reports in Excel, the creating reports in Power BI is just as straightforward, perhaps more straightforward than creating them within Excel. Another feature that makes it very easy to get to the data that you're looking for is the ability to ask a question about your data. So we'll take a look at that now. So if I want to start asking a question about data, I can just click on this option here. And this is where you can simply start typing what you're looking for, and the system is going to try and answer that particular question that you're asking. So an easy one is number of observations. So if I start typing that, you'll see the system is always trying to answer my question, and it's showing me the total number of observations within the data warehouse. We then may want to break that down a bit further. So I know that one of the fields on our observation form is potential outcome. So I might want to see this by potential outcome. And you'll see the system is always suggesting some available options for breaking down that number. So rather than typing the full name, I can just look at potential outcome. I can apply a filter. So I might be interested in last calendar year, for example. And so you can see it's very easy to get to the information you're looking for just by asking a question. Once you've done that, you've then got the usual options to change the chart type that we're looking at. We might want to look at the tree map for as an example. So you can get the particular visualization that you're looking for. And then you'll see here, I can easily pin that visual. So that's where I can pin that to my personal dashboard. So within a few clicks, I've been able to create my own visualization and save it, so I can always come back to that whenever I want to see the latest information.
So all the data that's captured in all the forms, Andy, is in the data warehouse, and you can just point Power BI or Excel towards that data. In fact, it doesn't even need to, it could be a third-party system, and you could do this.
Yeah, so absolutely, all the information captured in our forms is available, but as you say, it could be in another system that we've done a data integration with in order to give that consolidated view that's perhaps coming from a number of systems.
So if you're a whiz with Excel, the chances are you'd be able to create this. If there is a technical element, it's pulling the data from the kind of the back end. That's the bit that we would potentially get involved in.
Yeah, so Prosapian does the hard bit, which is the data integration and getting that data into the data warehouse, and that gives you the ability to then create all of the visualizations you want without having to help him create those reports for you. Okay, so that's a quick whistle-stop tour of our application. So we've seen the integration with SharePoint, views on the library, some examples of forms, including the mobile example. We've also seen some of the management information capability. So the ability to have statistics available at the click of a button for the users who just want to see some quick statistics, to the various ways that you can actually create your own additional visualizations and be self-sufficient.
Great, thanks, Andy. So I think we'll maybe hand back to Caitlin, and I think we've got a Q&A session now.
Yeah, hi, thank you, Andy, and thank you, Adam and Murray. I'm going to go through the questions that have been submitted through the GoToWebinar question feature. Overwhelmingly, the most biggest question asked, I guess, is about the slides, and we will be sending out the slides to all of those who respond to our survey. So we're going to send out a survey shortly after the completion of our webinar. Anyone who fills out the survey and provides your name, I don't believe the name is mandatory, but I need it to be able to send you the slides, will receive a copy of the material presented today. And I will give you about a week to complete that survey. So next Wednesday, expect to see the slides mailed to you or emailed to you if you have completed the survey. And we did get quite a few questions coming in. I'm going to start with you, Andy, since we've got the demo up here. It's probably easy to start with you. So I'm just going to start from the top here of what I've got that has come in. First question, is this program compatible and can it be integrated with other programs such as ADP or Frontline?
Okay, yes, absolutely. We are compatible with various other third-party applications. There's a couple of aspects to that. So one is around the data warehouse. So if there's additional data required for reporting purposes, it could be hours worked data, it could be your list of assets within the application that may be held in SAP, or the particular example that you mentioned there. So we can perform the data integration to pull data into the data warehouse. How we do that depends on the particular system. So that system may have an interface available for the integration. We may have access to the underlying database if that particular system is installed on a server somewhere within your organization. So we'd always look at the particular system and the options for getting access to that data. And that would mean that perhaps the integration is a real-time link, so the ability to link an incident to an item of equipment held in SAP, or it may be something like an overnight load for reporting purposes. So the majority of our implementations have some kind of integration aspect.
Yeah, just to add to that, they tend to be either historical data pulled from a previous EHS application, or it could be data just held on Excel spreadsheets. So there's that historical bit, so you can do year-on-year analysis. And the other element that we often bring in is it'd be man-hours worked. So, and that would come from, it can come from various different systems, SAP or whatever your ERP or HR system that logs that data.
Okay, great, thank you. Another question for ProSapien. Are the forms usable from a mobile device? And if so, which platform?
Yes, so they certainly are. I might just try and bring up the mobile example again. So all of our forms work on any device, and the forms actually resize according to the screen size available. So depending on the type of device you're using to fill in the form, it will present the best view for filling in on that device. We're compatible with all the major platforms, so iOS, the Apple version, Android devices, and Windows devices. Our system is not dependent on any of those platforms. So you don't need to install a specific app to get our forms working on your device. Our forms are browser-based and designed to work on any device. So it's very straightforward to get access to the forms. You don't need to install an app first. You simply access the forms through the web browser on that device.
And just to add to that, so in Vinci, you might recognize the logo. They're a large construction firm. And one of the things that they wanted to do, which we do, is provide people that are not necessarily using SharePoint access to hazard observation forms. So in this case, they had QR codes on the various EHS posters, and they have dozens of sites around the country. So you could rock up with your iPhone, scan the QR code, and it would bring up this particular form. You could fill in the form. You could do that anonymously. So they have contractors and members of the public, so not everybody wants to leave their details. You can attach a photograph to that and type in the issues that are of concern, and that then gets forwarded to the particular site manager or the EHS person, the EHS manager that that site relates to. And the reason why we can do that is because the QR codes are site specific. So once the information's in the form, it still gets routed through SharePoint and gets notifications are sent out, and it's managed within SharePoint. But you can fill in the form and not be a SharePoint user.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, another question for ProSapien. Can this tool be used for chemical inventory, usage and reporting, as well as calculate emissions?
Yes, absolutely. So we do cover environmental aspects within our system. So a good example that you mentioned there is the calculation of emissions. So we do have forms for collating energy consumption data from your various sites. That all goes into the data warehouse, and for example, the carbon emissions can be calculated automatically based on that data. That's probably a separate session to cover the environmental aspects of our system, but we do absolutely handle that. I think I've missed, what was the first element of that question again? So I covered emissions. Sorry, chemicals. Chemicals,
sure.
Yeah.
It was
so,
emission calculations, chemical inventory reporting, and chemical usage.
Yes, absolutely. So in terms of the chemical inventory reporting, so if you have safety data sheets on the chemicals that you use, we have the ability to manage those within SharePoint document libraries, alerting around keeping those up to date and keeping approved. We've also aspect where we've actually integrated with an existing system with the chemical inventory for an organization in order to associate incidents with particular chemicals as well. So we probably need to drill into that requirement a bit more to give a comprehensive answer, but we do have examples of that kind of functionality. Yeah.
Okay, I think I've got two more here for ProSapien. First, if we already have an action manager in SharePoint, can we link it to that action manager, or do we have to use the one in your system?
That's a good question. Yeah. Well, you should use ours because it's fantastic. But yeah, we do come across when we are working on an implementation. Quite often, our clients have perhaps done something with health and safety on SharePoint already. So we need to look at that on a case-by-case basis. So certainly there is the option to deploy our system into an existing site and perhaps integrate with some of the existing functionality that you've already developed internally. What I think we need to do there is maybe take a look at what's been developed and how easy that would be to integrate with. But in principle, because we're based on SharePoint, we're pretty flexible in the way we deploy the system. We don't have a fixed package that's locked down, and we can use out-of-the-box functionality that's perhaps been configured already within your organization. So it would be great to take a look at in a bit more detail at what you've developed there and how exactly we would integrate with that.
So yeah, just coming back to some of the points that Adam made earlier on in today's session, we would go through, and it may well be with the likes of Trinity, where we go through and understand your particular processes that you're currently using. And so we workshop that. And I mean, I'm not sure how other organizations go about the kind of initial element of deploying their software, but we find that, I mean, it's quite an intense time because you're sitting in front of, normally a number of EHS people from the company you're working with, and we basically go through their forms, we go through our forms, and we do a kind of gap analysis, and we look at the workflow, and having spent a couple of days doing that, we'll then go and write that up so we have a clear view of how the system's going to work within your environment. So, and that's a good case in point there. So if an organization's already using it could be, task management or follow-up actions, then we'd need to understand that, look at what would be the benefit of continuing that if they've got an in-house system versus our system that already integrates with all the forms that we have. So we would look at it on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, one last question for ProSapien. Question came in and it says, is it module-based? I'm assuming they are asking about ProSapien software in general.
Okay, that's a good question. So the way we work is we charge a kind of annual support fee, and that covers all elements of our software. So in effect, what we deploy will cover. So we don't charge on a modular basis. However, it may be that an organization has certain requirements. It could be contractor permit to work. It could be hazard observation. It could be a number of things. So they don't need the whole suite. So we would implement the elements that are their requirements. And the other thing is we might not do that in one go. So we might phase it. So if an organization has a requirement to get something in quick, for compliance reasons, then we can focus on that and maybe look at bringing in other elements of our software further down the line as and when their requirements, and timescales allow it often.
Okay, I think that covers our questions for Prosapien. Adam, I do have some questions for you. The first one is, how do you manage Outlook compliance calendars when you have personnel changes? Can email compliance reminders be sent to a role versus a person?
Yeah, I mean, and they hit on, you know, the exact principle that, you know, when you're doing a system implementation, you know, it's a good idea to, you know, do all task management through, you know, roles. And so really there's, you know, a couple of aspects, and maybe, you know, Andy and Murray can supplement my answer, but, you know, SharePoint can, you know, create shared calendars, as well as, you know, Outlook can as well. But, you know, that's based on individuals. You know, of course, in your network, you can, just like you have distribution groups when you email throughout your company, there are, you know, groups within your network that, you know, SharePoint can, you know, work off of. So giving permissions to a group of people, and thereby, you know, you end up, you know, managing the people that are in the group, you know, versus having to constantly, you know, reassign when, you know, there's turnover, or, you know, redo access points for that. So, I mean, yeah, absolutely. They can, it can be a, you know, group-based permissions to get that done.
Okay, great. One more question for you, Adam. Data entries into SharePoint are saved into SharePoint databases. Can that be shown in a Tableau report?
Yeah, and so I think the most likely the concept there is that the SharePoint database, you know, if you were to just connect to it on the back end, you know, it's not the most intuitively formed thing. So I mean, there's really multiple pathways here. You know, if you really wanted to, you could, you know, have your, you know, either depending on what version of SharePoint you're on, either InfoPath form or SharePoint form, send data directly to a database where, you know, you or an implementation consultant has formed a intuitive table, instead of, you know, that data necessarily being saved into the SharePoint database. It doesn't have to be that way. You know, on a minimum, if you didn't want to go through that process, you could, you know, do what, you know, Andy and Murray were showing, where, at least in my experience with Tableau, you know, you could, you know, produce one of your Excel reports, and, you know, Tableau accepts, you know, Excel data, although that's, you know, that wouldn't be a fully automated connection, necessarily. But the third portion of my answer there would be that, you know, what, you know, Andy and Murray were showing with Power BI is probably the way to go. You know, Tableau is a fantastic software, but when you're talking about the integration with, you know, SharePoint and, you know, other Microsoft products, you know, Power BI has caught up quite a bit, you know, in reporting aspects, and I think that would probably be the optimal way to go. And then, you know, the second most optimal way to go would be, you know, maybe creating, you know, a data, you know, repository that's a little bit more intuitive than the SharePoint database. But, you know, again, at a minimum, you could, you know, get that Excel report and load it into Tableau.
Okay, thank you, Adam. We have one more question that is for both of you. So, you know, whoever wants to go first to answer it. But the question is, have you helped anyone, you being Trinity and Prosapien, have you helped anybody switch over from Lotus Notes databases?
It's Andy here, so I can answer that. So we've actually helped a number of our clients move from Lotus Notes to our system. In some cases, those organizations have developed a number of modules internally on Lotus Notes, and we've been able to configure our system in some cases to match the processes that were in Lotus Notes. So the systems we come across have perhaps been in use for a number of years. The various users across the globe who use that system are accustomed to that particular process and the data that's requested. So in some of those cases, we've actually configured the forms and the processes in our system to closely fit what was used in Lotus Notes to make the transition for users far easier, but also pick up the benefits of being based on the Office 365 SharePoint system rather than being based on Lotus Notes, which is quite old technology. Also, in terms of the data integration that I mentioned, there's as part of our migration, there's always the need to bring in that historical data, and we do have experience with importing that historic data from Lotus Notes into our system in order to ease the transition as well.
Yeah, we probably have a case study on that somewhere.
Yeah.
If not, we could probably get you in touch with the client or one of our clients. But
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, and my experience in that is roughly the same. Even our Trinity consultants had to make that transition at one point, and it's the process that the ProSapien guys were just talking about, where it's really a process analysis and then a conversion over to a SharePoint, whether workflow, whether you're talking about, in our case, we had to convert, our IT, help desk ticket system over, or, our project management database, all those things had to be, converted over in one way or another. But, Microsoft products can do all of those things that, the Lotus Notes databases and Lotus Notes could do. But there's no magic button, import, app that you can use for it, but it absolutely can be done.
Okay, well, I think that wraps up our questions. Thank you all so much for calling in today and for all of the great questions. We really appreciate it. It makes it much more interactive when we can answer live questions. So like I mentioned before, this webinar was recorded. It will be posted on our website, and you will be seeing a survey from me later this afternoon. And once you complete that survey, I will add you to the list of recipients to receive the slide materials. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.